Welcome to the end of season number 2 here in the Houston Oilers franchise. This season, we finished 8-9, one loss, I guess worse than the last year where we were 9-8 over 500. And we find ourselves right in the middle of the pack once again for the second straight year. And today we will have a recap of the season and a preview to the NFL draft and the offseason. Now, we did have a Pro Bowler in Antonio Gibson and also a Pro Bowler in Micah Hyde. Now, Micah Hyde was helped out a lot by his 7.5 sacks, which we will take a look at. He was in on a lot of nickel blitzes, and it definitely helped him out. Also, Jack Podlesny ends up being a Pro Bowler. I'm very surprised at that, but now that I think about it, he didn't really miss a field goal all year. The Chiefs were on top of the NFL. They were 14-3. The Commanders had the best record in the NFC. But looking at our division, once again, we are, right there with the Broncos. We are 8-9. They are 9-8. The Chargers did make the playoffs at 10-7. But the Chiefs continue to reign dominant, even though they probably weren't the most dominant offense in the division. That was the Chargers who put up the most points by about 50. But the number one seeds in the NFC and AFC end up meeting in the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs did defeat the Chargers and Ravens on their way to this Super Bowl appearance. And then the Washington Commanders end up defeating the Cowboys 36-35 in the NFC Championship game. The Commanders actually drafted a quarterback in the second round, and he ends up being like a really good player, and he's going to win Rookie of the Year in the NFC. 45 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and just look at the accolades. He was NFC Offensive Player of the Week in Week 1 in his first start, and then he won 4 more after that, and then wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Could have actually been MVP of the league. I'm not even sure that's ever happened, a rookie winning MVP. But they've also acquired Josh Jacobs, and he is their star running back. And looking at the last 2 seasons, he ran for 1,500 last year, only 800 this year. Terry McLaurin is the star of their receiving core. He's had back-to-back at least 7 touchdown seasons, and they find themselves in the Super Bowl for the first time in a very long time. And looking at the awards on the year, Lamar Jackson wins MVP. I believe this is his second straight MVP, by the way. And Antonio Gibson finishes top 3 in Player of the Year in the AFC. TJ Watt is the frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year. Bernard McMichael is going to be the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I think this kind of shows why it's very, very important for us to find our franchise quarterback. Dave Washington actually jumps Max James in those final 2 games and ends up winning Rookie of the Year. And you know what that means. He gets a couple of depth tree upgrades based on the XP he earns. But then, more importantly, he gets that superstar dev upgrade. Very, very excited to see what he will do. And how I've kind of, had him on the depth chart. I've had him at right outside linebacker this entire year. I played him at the edge rusher the last 2 games in formation subs, but he's only 75 overall, so he doesn't get access to all of these superstar abilities yet. But he's going to probably end up being the sub linebacker next year, taking that spot from Devin Bush, because I like what Washington brings to the table better than what Bush does. Antonio Gibson does win Best Running Back, so that is the second straight year he wins it. That means 2 straight upgrades, so he will now be Superstar X Factor. That's no small feat, but it was definitely easier to get it for him than it was for Dave Washington. I definitely had to maneuver the defense to be able to, create plays for him, and that was kind of what I was aiming for the last couple of games, and we achieved it. Micah Hyde actually finishes second in best cornerback, and like I said, it stems off of that 7.5 sack season that he had, and he had a lot of nickel blitz sacks, and that added up the last 4 games where he had 5.5 in the final 4 games. It was an incredible run. Offensive Rookie of the Year in the NFC, Danny McCord actually finished his second behind Mason Rosen, and then Nate Donovan, who we passed on in the draft. We could have traded up for him, Actually, we could have drafted him in the first round if we really wanted to, but he finished his third in the Offensive Rookie of the Year in the NFC. And there are a lot of guys that did re-sign with their teams, so I'm not really sure if any of these superstars will hit free agency in the offseason. But one superstar that we signed before getting that Superstar X Factor 2 years ago in Season 1, I guess 1 year ago, was Antonio Gibson, and now he is our first 90 overall on the team. He is Superstar X Factor, a back-to-back award winner for Best Running Back. And looking at his abilities, I think I'm going to get First One Free onto him. And First One Free is some players thrive on making defenders look silly. When they enter the zone, this ability increases their fake out rate on the next juke. So that is activated by rushing for 10 plus yards. And with Antonio Gibson, that's been pretty easy to do. Like, we've had multiple runs of over 10 yards. It's kind of what he thrives at. So that's a superstar ability that is going to be Superstar X Factor ability that's going to be pretty easy to activate in the future. I want to take a look at the other quarterbacks in the division because I want to show you guys what we have to measure up with. Bernard McMichael is now Superstar X Factor. Justin Herbert is a Superstar Dev, and obviously Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. So we definitely have to compete with these three quarterbacks. Each of them probably going to be 90 plus overall next season, and seeing that McMichael just won Rookie of the Year, he's going to be there pretty quickly. That means that we need to find our franchise quarterback in the offseason, and the owner has requested that we find our franchise quarterback, and we find him now, and that's a demand. DTR, 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions this year, obviously only started for half the season. He probably would have topped his touchdown total from last year. He had 20 in his rookie season. But I think we just need to find a new situation for him. I think we've seen enough, and I just don't think it's going to work out here. But Philip Waters is the interesting one. You know, I do see some differences from him to DTR. Philip Waters doesn't miss the easy short throws. He does miss the easy long throws, and that's something that we might have to evaluate a little bit. But Antonio Gibson finishes second in the NFL in rushing and finishes first among running backs in touchdowns. Not touchdowns on the ground, but total touchdowns. He had 14 on the ground, but Austin Eckler had 21 on the ground. So actually, he may have been second. Austin Eckler had 21 touchdowns. That's a lot of touchdowns. And he only fumbled the ball once. J-Ron McAllister had 5 rushing touchdowns on his own on the ground, and I definitely made it a point to get him the ball more this year. And he actually did pretty well. Like, in games where he had to fill in, I did see a drop off, but it wasn't like super noticeable. Like, I was still able to do some really good things with him. Philip Waters finished with 5 rushing touchdowns, and our third string running back was Willie Wayne Jr. for a lot of the year, an undrafted rookie, and I liked what he brought to the table. He definitely brought that element that Antonio Gibson brought, and that was catching the ball out of the backfield. Our receiving core, I think, needs a bit of a boost. And one thing I'm going to be looking to do is I might bring in a number 1 receiver. Marvin Mims, I don't think is a true number 1. I think because of his size, he's a little bit undersized, and it's a little bit hard to kind of do everything with him. Like, I can't throw up jump balls to him. He's a little too small for that. He can, run crossing routes really well. Across the middle, he has the speed. But I think Jesse Fisher does that just as well. Like, he is kind of a one-speed receiver. He scored 6 touchdowns and led our team in receiving touchdowns. Irv Smith Jr. actually hit the ground running with us early on in this season, but then kind of slowed down throughout the rest of the year. I think teams started to catch on to, how we would use him. And he did get an injury late in the season where he missed 4 games. But besides that, he had a great start. Like I said, the first game was 9 for 109, and the second game was 6 for 145 and a touchdown. And then after that, he kind of tailed off a little bit. He finished under 500 yards on the season. We obviously still have Kyle Phillips, who fills in. Callum McDermott's rookie year was interesting. He had 22 for 324. His depth chart actually wasn't even revealed until like the final game of the season. And he ends up being pretty decent. 73 overall, star dev. I think he had a decent rookie season. our offensive line definitely had their struggles. And it starts with our right tackle, Terrence Steele. I signed him to kind of be that anchor on the right side. He was okay. He had some bad games, but for the most part, he was pretty decent. Kevin Dotson at left guard is probably our best offensive interior lineman at the moment. But I would say that I am not opposed to upgrading if we find something in free agency or the draft. Matt Hennessy was by far our worst offensive lineman on the year. We failed to protect right to the right side of the quarterback. Obviously, right-handed quarterbacks have to throw over the right guard when we're throwing, to the, I would say, near side of the field, especially to the right side where we mostly line up guys in the slot. We don't really throw back to the left too much because it's a longer throw, and that's where we failed to protect Philip Waters, I think, and DTR actually suffered from it as well. But I definitely want to upgrade right guard. I definitely want to try to upgrade left tackle. Zach Tom wasn't too bad, but I would like something better. I don't think he, like I said, had a bad season, not as bad as Matt Hennessy. But I really love what I saw from Sean Harris when he was healthy. Now, Sean Harris only played in 12 games, and hopefully he can be healthy next year, and that hurt us because when he was out, I definitely think our offensive line definitely did not perform up to its expectation. Tackles wise, and once again, I think, a thing with tackles is that you have to take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, your middle linebacker is going to lead your team in tackles, but I think it's actually a good thing that we did not have, our top two tacklers as cornerbacks. That's always a bad sign. That means that rushers are always getting to the outside. And looking at Micah Hyde, he had an excellent season. He had 7.5 sacks. And like I said, he was our nickel corner. And because of that, he actually ends up getting a development trade increase. I did not think that if you lead your position in sacks, you get an upgrade. That's the only thing I can think of why he got this upgrade. But because maybe he was a safety and he led the league in sacks as a safety with 7.5, he gets a dev trait upgrade. So this is amazing. So we get Dave Washington to get the superstar dev upgrade. We get Micah Hyde now as superstar. And then we have Christian Barmore, who is also a superstar. But more to come on Barmore in a second. But I definitely am happy that we have a guy in the secondary that is at least superstar dev. We move over to Christian Barmore, and I said I would bring him up in a second because he actually loses his superstar dev. And he goes down to a star. We have that on where you can get demoted, and it's probably because he did not finish, top. I believe you have to finish top 5 in your position in sacks or tackles for loss or something like that. And I think he just didn't achieve that. And one thing about him is that I'm not even mad that he had the season that he had. He had a really good season, 5.5, 11 tackles for loss. He bumped that number up. He had more tackles overall. I would say, like I said, he had a pretty good season. I'm surprised that he got that demotion, but it's likely because he did not finish, like I said, top 3 in the league in sacks at defensive end. James Houston the fourth was okay. I was expecting him to do a little more. He ended up with 3 sacks, but the guy I was really hoping to, show what he can do was Terrell Harvin. And I think, about halfway through the season, he started to begin getting, starting jobs week in and week out, but then he got hurt. But looking at this, I actually went to reveal his dev trait, and he is actually a superstar X Factor, but in all honesty, I don't think it's fair to keep him at superstar X Factor. Like, he did not deserve it because he was not healthy the whole year, and he's kind of a lower overall. And I know the game kind of generated that and gave him superstar X Factor, but I just didn't think the numbers supported it. So I'm actually going to move him down to a star dev. And like I said, I strive for realism in these rebuilds and in these series, and I just think it's realistic. Even though the game gave him that superstar X Factor, I didn't think he had a superstar X Factor season, so I'm going to demote him down to star dev. I want to be fair in this series. Now let's talk about our first round draft pick, Casey Burton. Only 1 interception on the year. He had a decent year. He had some plays that he made. Didn't see enough plays, at least to go in his favor, though. I want to see more interceptions from him, and that's one thing that I'm going to be looking for him going into year 2 of his career. Sidney Brown started out the series, or at least this season, pretty fast. He had a pick in the opener and did not have an interception the rest of the year. And that's where we really struggle, getting interceptions. And to be all honesty, I think that I've given him enough time to show that he is a capable safety. Yes, he was pretty good in coverage, but I'm looking for somebody to make plays, especially a guy that's always in man coverage against tight ends. And he could have taken advantage of that, and he just didn't. So I think safety is one of those positions that I'm looking at in the offseason at upgrading. So definitely look out for that. But looking at where we ranked offensively, we were actually pretty good. Passing touchdowns, we were bottom 10, but that was because we ran the ball extremely well. Like, we were one of the top 10 rushing touchdown teams in the league, and we had one of the best total offenses in the league. But defensively, it was the complete opposite. We were dead last in points given up. We were dead last in passing yards allowed. Now, on the flip side, we were number 1 in rushing, but that was because teams could pass on us. Why run the ball when you could just pass on them? And we were one of the worst passing off defenses by like a long shot. And we also gave up the most points in the NFL this year. I was pretty surprised at this one, though. We were actually top 5 in sacks with 36. I think that was because, like I said, Micah Hyde had that 7.5 sack season, but I think that was an anomaly. Like, I don't think that's ever going to happen again. And then looking at fumbles, we actually did do better than last year. Last year, we only forced 1 fumble, so that's pretty good. Interception-wise, we were bottom 2. We were tied for second to last with 6 interceptions, and that's definitely something that I blame on the pass rush a little bit. Like, even though we had sacks, like, we could not have any coverage interceptions where we, had, pressure on the quarterback and forced an errant throw. Nothing like that. I remember only 1 interception being that way, and that was Casey Burton's first interception. So a lot of you guys ask about the roster and what it looks like in totality, and I'm gonna kind of go over that right now as we look at our practice squad and other positions. And like always, I'm going to have it so that you guys can be undrafted free agents going into the offseason. That's something that I really like doing. And we had a couple of you guys that did submit and did end up making the roster, like Willie Wayne Jr. here. He was a pretty crucial part of the offense. Like Jesse Fisher Jr., he was one of those undrafted free agents. So looking at, how our team looks, I want to make sure that undrafted free agents are a thing and they do get playing time, and I do want to use them. Everybody has kind of a special skill set, and I try to find players in free agency, the real undrafted generated ones, and rename them to you guys. I do not doctor ratings at all or anything like that, but I think that, in Madden, you can find those diamonds in the rough, like Jesse Fisher Jr. Like, he is the perfect example. He was the guy that led our team in receiving touchdowns and ends up contributing. I'm hoping to find some defensive players like interior defensive linemen that can make that difference, and maybe even pass rushers. So I'm going to be posting that in the community tab probably sometime today, so that you guys can get those submissions in, so that when we have the offseason, I can find some undrafted free agents that, we can rename you guys to. Okay, I said in the second half of the episode, though, we will be talking about the NFL draft. Now, going into this draft, we have 2 first-round picks. Remember, we traded Tyree Wilson for the Tampa Bay pick. That ends up being pick 22. We have 2 second-round picks, a 3rd, a 6th, and a 7th. So we have 5 picks in the top 80. So I'm very excited about that. So what is our idea going into the draft? Well, I definitely want to add to our pass rush. That's probably the number one thing. And I also want to possibly find our franchise quarterback. But first, let's talk about the best prospects in the draft. And let's start with Brandon Lawrence. He is the best cover corner in the league, and in the draft, I should say, and he is going to be a guy that can play zone, he can play man, but what really sets him apart is his athleticism. He can make up for any bad coverage just making up with his speed. Like, he is just that type of playmaker. He is the best cornerback in college football, and he's probably going to go top 5. I don't think he's going to go number 1, though, but that's just me. I don't know if a cornerback will ever go number 1, but we'll see. But Matthew Pitts out of Auburn is kind of making waves that he could go number one. He is a relentless pass rusher. He reminds me a lot of TJ Watt. Like, he is just an effort guy all the way, and he has the technical skills to go along with that. And he is off the charts athletically. Like, he is great to elite in everything. He comes with B pursuit, only C power moves, which I'm pretty surprised at, but I'm pretty sure the finesse move is A to B right now with 70% scouted. That's going to probably end up being an A. The third ranked prospect in the draft is Dorian Odom, an electric running back out of Oklahoma. Have we seen this story before? Who's been the last great Oklahoma running back that we've seen in the NFL? Well, if he can live up to Adrian Peterson, that would be an amazing feat. But Odom is his own kind of guy. I don't think he has that true breakaway speed, but he is electric. He can really make, any game different just by getting the ball 20 times as opposed to 15 times. Like, if you get him the ball more, he's going to change the outcome of a game. And I think whoever drafts him is going to have a very good running back for about a decade. Now, Kevin Jones is interesting. He's out of Florida State. He is 21 years old, but he did not play in his senior season. This play right here, in the rain, he kind of tweaked something in his leg, and they said it was a lower leg injury, but he ended up sitting out for the rest of the year. He didn't want to ruin his draft stock by going out there and getting hurt again, so he decided to sit out. But here are his core attributes. He has A awareness, A block shedding, B finesse moves, B power moves. So that shows you right there that he's going to be a versatile guy getting after the quarterback. The last top 5 ranked guy is Dave Presley. We didn't have any film on him, but he is a good safety. I'm not sure if he'll go top 5, though. I am very, very weary that safeties go top 5, but we'll see. Now, let's talk about a guy I'm very interested in. Now, we are at pick number, 15 in the draft, and we could trade up for Eddie Lockridge. I really, really like Eddie Lockridge. He is awesome athletically. He can get after the quarterback, and he is really going to be a pure pass rusher. And I think that his size, speed, and ability just set him apart. He comes in with A finesse moves, A pursuit, B hit power, so maybe he can force some fumbles. But he is 6'3", 244. And I think that, if he is available still at probably like pick 5, I'm pretty sure I could make the move to trade up for him. We have the assets. Now, in that highlight right there, they were playing Ole Miss, and Dexter Greco was playing in that game. I did not get any film on Dexter Greco, but he looks like a pretty good prospect. I'm not sure if he's generational or anything like that. He's just a solid interior defensive lineman. But let's talk about Auburn again. Now, we already talked about Pitts. He is the best pass rusher in this draft, in my opinion. But then there's Zaire Boss. Zaire Boss won the Lombardi Trophy for the best defensive lineman in NCAA. Now, one thing about Boss is that he is going to be a guy that is going to be more of a run stopper more than a pass rusher. And there's nothing wrong with that. You always need guys that are dominant up front. But I don't think if you're looking for a pass rusher, he's your guy. I think he's going to be a really good defensive lineman, but not anybody that's going to get a 15 sack, 20 sack season, nothing like that. He doesn't have that type of potential. Now, I want to talk about a guy that I hope falls to us at our pick. And if he doesn't, I think that he is a good second option to Lockridge. It's Nick Woods out of Alabama. I really, really love his technique. He is very, very good. And I think that he is a guy that we could definitely trade up for if we need to. But I kind of compare him with a guy way down the board, ranked at number 21 in Von Cross. I look at the two of these guys and I see kind of similar players. And I think that in a perfect world, we would somehow end up with both and be able to choose, from the two of them. But I think either way, we're either going to have to trade up for Nick or stay pat and select Von Cross. Von Cross is very, very athletic. He's great to elite in almost everything. He's got A awareness, B block shed, A finesse moves, A pursuit, C power moves, but really, really good across the board. And I would not be mad if he fell to us. But looking at the difference between Lockridge and Von Cross, there's not much of a difference. And I like Lockridge the most out of anybody just because he is like almost great to elite and everything, just like Von Cross. But I'm not seeing too big of a difference. Von Cross actually might be a little better. I'm not exactly sure, but those three guys are probably really, really similar. So I wouldn't be mad if we just stay put and don't trade up and end up getting and selecting Von Cross. So let's talk about the top quarterbacks in the draft. And I talked about this about halfway through the season, but I think this quarterback class is not weak. It's just not as good as last year. There are probably 4 draftable quarterbacks in this class, and the first is Kurt Goodrich. Now, Goodrich has played with a lot of great Alabama wide receivers, which has probably boosted his stock more than it had to, but he is a big lefty. He's got one of the strongest arms in the draft, and we'll see, but I don't know if that's the selection I'm looking for. Then there's the quarterback that could end up being our selection, and that's Deshaun Mitchell out of Auburn. The one thing that scares me is that he has C accuracies across the board, and one thing that we've wanted is an accurate quarterback. But he does fit the mold of what we're looking for, a dual threat quarterback who can make all the throws. He can make all of them, but he does have C deep accuracy and C medium accuracy. But that throw under pressure is also a B, which is good. I'm wondering if that short accuracy is also a C. I'm very scared about that. Like, I think that I don't want to take another guy that's of that DTR, Phillip Waters mold. I would much rather get a more accurate guy. And that's where we go to the next 2 guys in this quarterback class, in Keon Carter and the next guy, Greg McPherson. Let's start with Keon Carter. Keon Carter is not as mobile as what we saw from Deshaun Mitchell, but he is a guy that is going to make all of the throws and be accurate. Now, he can run if he needs to, but his accuracy is his calling card. He is the most accurate quarterback in this draft class to me. Now, going into a spread system like Tennessee, he might have a little bit of a learning curve, but I think he can make all of the throws. Look how he stands in the pocket, throwing to the corner right there. That is a dot. And I think that one thing that he's going to do, he's going to throw his guys open. He's got A short accuracy, B medium, B deep. Obviously, he's a round 2 to 3 projection for a reason. And that kind of scares me a little bit. But maybe he's just a diamond in the rough that actually is a first-round talent. We only have him 50% scouted, and he does have a great to elite arm. But then there's the small school quarterback in Greg McPherson. He's only 6 foot. He's not the greatest in mobility, but he is a little bit faster than Keon Carter, actually. But McPherson has a rocket arm, and I think he's going to make a NFL team very, very happy with his potential. And it could be us. He is a day 3 projection, though, so I don't think we would even have to use one of our first, maybe not even our second round picks on him. I think he might fall in the draft. This draft is super, super deep on defense, so I don't see a lot of teams reaching on quarterbacks and offensive players, but he does have A short accuracy and B medium accuracy. I will briefly touch on receiver because we have a receiver that was a quarterback in college in Deion Branson. I don't have any highlights on him, but Jonathan Coachman did tweet out here that Deion Branson had an excellent season, setting an all-time record for TD throws at Boise State. So that's interesting. But the thing is, do I really take a risk on drafting Branson and hoping he's a quarterback? I'm not sure we have, kind of the leeway to take that risk. But one receiver I am very high on is Quincy Hall. He is a round 2 to 3 projection. He is 6'3", a big body, something we don't really have right now, and he makes it very, very interesting going into draft season. If he's there with our 3rd round pick, I am very, very happy to select him. I just don't think I'm going receiver in the top 2 rounds, and if he's there and he falls, I am very, very willing to make that selection. But like I said, one of the biggest things in the offseason is that I want to upgrade left tackle and right guard. And we do have a very good tackle class in this draft, and there are some very good guards in this draft. I look at Aaron Murray from Ohio State, A awareness, A pass block. Pass blocking at the guard position is something we're missing. Mike Malecki, A awareness, A impact block, A pass block. I mean, these are things that I am really looking at really closely, because if I see a offensive lineman I like, it's important to draft really good ones, because offensive linemen don't get XP like the rest of the positions in Madden. But then I look at cornerback, and like I said, and like you saw earlier, we were finished for second to last in interceptions in the league. And one thing that I did like about Casey Burton is that he did allow, a lot of pass breakups in this secondary. I want to say allow, but he did, have a lot of pass breakups. And one thing that separated him was his speed. So I'm really looking for some more speed at cornerback and guys that can cover in man coverage. And that's why I fell to Alani Rutherford, who might be one of my favorite players in this draft. Great to elite speed. He comes in at A man coverage. His zone coverage is at a B. I like these guys that are well-rounded, because one thing that we could not do last year is play zone coverage, because our zone was just so bad. And I wanted to play more man, and that's kind of what I want to do, but I do want the flexibility to switch between man and zone. And Alani Rutherford does give us that flexibility. He actually comes in with a press too. So that's going to help. If we can play some man press coverage, that's amazing. So Alani Rutherford, look for him to possibly be one of our second round selections. I do need to upgrade safety as well. There are a couple of guys I'm looking at. Trevante Charles, he comes in with a pursuit, a hit power. I don't have any thumpers on the defense right now, anybody that can force fumbles. I'm not sure that's a real priority, but we do have some options. Then we have Clint Ferguson out of Harvard. Now we have our 6th and 7th round draft picks, so we could end up drafting one of these late round safeties, and that's kind of what I'm thinking if we do keep those selections. But he comes in having potentially a hit power. So I definitely want to kind of establish a guy like that in our secondary that could force some fumbles. So that's going to do it for the NFL draft preview. And one thing I do want to highlight with you guys are the sliders. This is what we finished the season with, and this is what we will go into next season with. I think these played extremely well. And I think that one thing about it is that I hope that when we do get pass rushers in the offseason, hopefully it doesn't seem like the, CPU offensive lineman is just still kind of dominating our pass rush. I'm hoping that we don't have to tweak these sliders at all. I think that's the one negative thing that I've seen about gameplay. Like, our guys were not getting any pass rush when we rushed 4. We had to send a blitz every time. Besides that, those sliders are what we're going to rock with in season number 3. So next episode will be the off season, so you don't want to miss that. I'm very excited. I had a fun second season, and I'm having a lot of fun in this series altogether. So we'll see what happens here in the off season. I hope you guys are excited, but we do have a superstar dev now. Actually, 2 superstar devs with Micah Hyde and Dave Washington, and Antonio Gibson goes to superstar X Factor. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like in action. So hit subscribe, hit that like button. I will have that post so you guys can post undrafted free agents later today. But stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still trying to fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war.